Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be looking at one of the best features that Capture One has to help you improve your food photography composition while you're tethering. So we're going to go through a shoot, we're going to do a complete behind the scenes, and I'm going to show you how I use the overlay tool to elevate my composition. I've got a free composition overlay down in the description for you, which we're going to be using in this video. So you can download that, follow along, upload it on your own version of Capture One, and let's jump in. Okay, so we are going to be shooting a grilled polenta with like a pomegranate salsa recipe. So it's got lots of little things, like I've cut the polenta into little triangles. So there's a lot of things to kind of arrange. And for that, I feel like the dynamic symmetry grid, which has a lot of diagonals, is going to be a really good tool. So first of all, before we jump into all of that, let me give you a little overview of my Capture One workspace, how I like to work, and the tools that I have on my tethering screen. I like to keep my tethering workspace quite minimal. So I simply have my camera, which is up here. This is what gives me all the controls. So I can change my shutter speed, aperture, ISO, color temperature, all that stuff, my shooting mode, all from directly within this panel. So this is the one I keep at the top. Then next I have my camera focus. So I'm actually going to be using manual focus today, but if I was using a different kind of autofocus, this is really helpful for controlling that. And then next I have my camera settings panel. So this lets me dive a little bit deeper into some of the sort of more back-end settings of my camera. So things like the RAW mode, the aspect ratio for shooting. If I'm using a custom color temperature, I can set that in here. It's just a useful one to have handy. And then lastly, we have the overlay tool, and we're going to jump into that in a minute. So first of all, let's set up our camera so we can actually see what we're doing. So I'm going to be using flash today. So I'm going to keep my shutter speed at 1/250th of a second. And I want to do that to cut out all of the ambient light in the room. So anything coming from the light, the window, the video lights we've got going, and 1/250th is the maximum sync speed of my camera. So basically, without using a high-speed sync flash, that is the fastest my shutter speed can go when shooting with flash. So I'm just going to leave that like that. I'm going to change my ISO to 100 because I don't need to have it any brighter than that. And you'll notice on my screen, everything is getting blacker and blacker, and that is exactly what we want. And then I think I'm going to leave my aperture at f8. So for this flat lay, I don't really want any blurriness in the depth of field. So I'm going to keep my aperture quite narrow, should do the trick. It's not a very deep scene. Right now, you can see we've got a black screen. That is exactly what we want right now because I want to cut out all of the ambient light. So I know that the only light influencing my image is what's going to come from the flash. So if I go ahead and turn on my trigger, then my camera does a very handy thing where it shows me what I'm looking at. So I can actually see what I'm doing again. So that's kind of ready to go for us. So next, it's time to start sort of composing the scene. I like to get the basic props in and then do a lighting test and then kind of finalize my composition. Looking at this grid tool up here, this is sort of the standard Capture One tool. So if we turn on the grid, you'll see we get a rule of thirds grid. And there is a little bit more that you can do with the grid tool. So if I just add the grid tool down here, you'll see that we get the option to choose the rectangular grid, which is the rule of thirds. We get the golden ratio, which is similar to the rule of thirds, but it's in the golden ratio. So the lines are a little closer together in the middle. And then we can also have the Fibonacci spiral, which is the golden spiral. So that's great. I think it's great that we have 3 options, and you can change all of the things in here, like the color of your overlay. So depending on what you're shooting, you know, if you're shooting something really yellow, maybe the yellow grid doesn't make sense and the red one would be better. And you can also choose sort of how many lines you want. But I just find all of these grids are a bit basic. And if you want to move on to something a bit more advanced, like dynamic symmetry, you're ready to take your composition to the next level, that's when you're going to need the overlay tool. So if we turn off the grid and open up the overlay tool, here is where we can drag in a PNG image, basically of any composition grid. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag in the dynamic symmetry grid, and you'll see now our whole screen is overlaid with this grid. Now you can download this set from below. In the set, I've got the dynamic symmetry grid in black and white in a landscape and a portrait orientation. So you should have every base covered. And we can do things like change the opacity, so we can make it sort of more opaque or less opaque. So if you just want to see a hint of the grid, you can choose, and then you can choose to offset it should you want to, but I don't think that's necessary. I'm gonna go ahead and set about a 50% opacity, and then we can start to lay out our base composition. So I'm gonna use this board as the main thing that's gonna, be the center of our composition. So this is gonna hold most of that polenta. I think I might give myself a little bit more space than that. I've got my camera mounted on a C-stand just to keep everything really nice and sturdy. And I've chosen a blue backdrop because the polenta is very yellow and then the pomegranate salsa has a lot of red and green. And I feel like it's just gonna create this really nice, bright, summery feel. So I think it'll work for this shot. So the first thing that I wanna do is make sure that my camera is completely straight in every plane. So I'm just gonna take off my trigger for a moment and instead pop on my little hot shoe spirit level, which you've seen me use before. This is just a great little tool for making sure that your camera is straight, sort of this way and this way. That looks good on the side. I'll just make sure it's good at the front as well. So now I know my camera is completely straight. I'm not gonna need to move it again or adjust it. I'll pop my trigger back on. This is what's gonna allow me to control the flash, and then we can start positioning. So I'm gonna put my board, I think here, and then I might have a supporting bowl with some extra elements. But what I wanna do first, just set my focus and get my lighting sorted. So right now I've got a 70 by 100 centimeter softbox set up, but what I'm gonna do is turn it into a landscape orientation, because this scene I'm shooting as a landscape image, and I wanna make sure that the lighting's very even across the scene this way. I don't kind of want the light coming in like this and trying to spread out. I might as well spread it evenly from the beginning. So I'm gonna raise it up a little bit, angle it down. I'll also plug it in, that would also help. I have got this set to 1/16 power. So let's just take a shot and see where we're at with those settings and that brightness. Okay, it's a little bit dark, so I think we can go up. Maybe we go down 1. So now we should be just below 1/8 power. Okay, I think that's giving us some leeway for now. Just center that board a little bit more. So I want to use some baking paper as a base layer for my polenta pieces to sit on. And this is gonna sort of form the first diagonal that I'm gonna use in this scene. So I want to cut it so it's sort of just a little bit bigger than the board. So I'm just gonna grab my scissors. So if I put this on the board, should be good size-wise. Maybe just take a little bit more this way. So I'm actually gonna crinkle it, give it a little bit of texture and also help it lay flat. So initially, I'm gonna use this middle line, so this main intersectional line, to help me sort of position that paper. I'm not going completely perfectly like this, but I'm using it as a bit of a guide to start to get a bit of shape. And now we've already got a bit of dynamic tension happening between the board being straight and this one being diagonal. So let me just take another shot and see how that's looking. Yep. I think that's okay so far. Now I might want to have a little extra bowl of the pomegranate salsa in here. So let me grab a couple of options. So I've got a few different options and I think I'm gonna need to use a little makeup sponge to prop up. So I wanna use this line here, so the opposite main bisectional line to position the bowl. So I don't want it to be off the board completely, but I don't want to take up too much space on the board with the bowl. So I think I'm gonna need to just create a little platform here, and then I can cut these down to the size that I need. So I'm just gonna take a couple of shots with the different bowls just to see what the different options look like. Okay, so we've got that one. And then lastly, we have this one. Now this one actually also has this little spout, which we could use this line to position to create a bit of a leading line down here as well. So that could be nice. I think this one works quite well. Sometimes I like to just turn the overlay off to have a look. Don't think that one fits, or that one. So it would be between this one and this one. And I think this one is better. So let's stick with that one. And actually that's quite good because it hides the sponges very well. So let's just readjust that paper. Get our bowl positioned. Okay, very nice. So now we can start positioning that polenta. So what I'm gonna do is start layering pieces using these diagonal lines, which I can see on the dynamic symmetry grid, to help me create variation while still keeping things looking natural. So I don't want to follow every single line exactly because things would just look too precise and unnatural. But what I'm gonna do is just pick out the best pieces. And I'm going to use these lines to help me vary the angles. So here you can see I'm using that main line for this long piece, and then I'm using this other line. This is a good piece. And then let's maybe try this one. And they don't have to be completely perfectly in line as well. So I'm going to make sure that I'm varying the directions. I'm just going to focus on these intersections first. Make sure that the grill lines are also going in different directions because I don't want it to look too symmetrical. Okay. And then I'm going to start to layer some pieces as well. So this is just going to help me create direction in the frame while still using those composition techniques. And I might add a few more pieces as we go, but I don't want to overcrowd it straight away because we have still got the salsa to go on as well. Let's just take a shot and see how things are looking. I think we need one more piece at the top in this little gap up here. So I'm going to go like this to layer it. And then let's take another one. So I think the whole thing just needs to move up a little bit in the frame. The whole, just so the spacing at the top and the bottom of the frame is a little bit more even. Now I'm thinking about maybe bringing in a little bounce card or something just to lift the shadows a little bit because I don't want this to be too moody. I want this to really be a nice, bright, colourful shot. A little bounce card and then just take a few shots and try at different distances to reflect some of that light back. So I'll start quite close and then just move it back a little bit and a bit more. I think the medium one is quite nice, so about here. So I think what I'm gonna do is just get a little clamp on a stand. So I've got this light stand, which I'm just gonna use to attach my fill card. And then I'm gonna lower it to about there. So that's gonna now act as a nice fill. So I think I'm happy enough with the polenta for the moment. So I'm gonna start spooning on the salad. We're probably not far off our final touches and the final shot. So I'll just give this a little mix. And I wanna make sure that each piece has some salsa on it. And I'm not gonna be too precise because I kind of want it to have that sort of sharing platter spilling over look. but I do want to make sure that you can still see the polenta pieces underneath as well. So I don't want to overdo it and then lose all those nice grill lines. So here, maybe we just have a little bit. All right, let's take a shot and see where we're at. All right, so now that that is in, I think everything is just looking a bit dark. So let's turn power up on our light. And sometimes as you add more and more things, you'll see how the exposure needs to change. Like the polenta itself was much brighter than the salsa, so now everything is covered. It obviously makes a difference. Try even maybe one brighter. I think that might be one too many. So let's go back to the last one. So that is looking nice. So now I'm gonna add some more of that pomegranate salsa into the bowl. And then we're gonna add some finishing touches to the scene. I've got a few more fresh herbs and also a few more pomegranate seeds, just to make everything look a little bit more natural. Okay, so I've got some fresh mint leaves. So I'm gonna pick a few of the smaller ones because there is fresh mint in the salsa. So I wanna make sure that you can really see that. And then what I'm gonna do is use these lines to help me place where I want these leaves to go. And that's also gonna help me make sure that things aren't looking too even, give me a nice spacing. Have a few incidental ones on the side as well, just to make everything look nice and casual. Down here with these pomegranate leaves. And then final touch of just a couple more pomegranate seeds. Again, not too many, just a couple on the sides, maybe a couple by our salad bowl. There we go. I am happy with that. So that is how I use the overlay tool with a more advanced composition technique like the dynamic symmetry grid to help me just take that composition to the next level. Like I mentioned, don't forget to download the dynamic symmetry Capture One overlay below. You can also use this in other softwares that allow you to upload a PNG. So I hope you found this useful and enjoyed coming behind the scenes with me, and I'll see you in the next video.